right. Looks like we are live. I'm going to wait just a few minutes here just to see if anybody, or just wait for people to pop in here. All right. Cool. Just double checking. All right, we are good to roll here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So what we're talking about here is the upsides of stress. So this is one of those common topics. Stress. Everybody experiences stress. So let's first just talk about defining what stress is. So by definition, stress is a feeling of emotional or physical tension. Okay, so that becomes a broad spectrum of everything. I mean, we talk about stress. Stress has been defined as I hit too many red lights on the way to work and I got stressed because I was late, to I lost somebody in my family and now I'm stressed out because of the loss of the family. So stress has become this thing that has a very broad spectrum. And it's also been kind of like a rite of passage when you're talking to somebody. It's like, oh, my life is so stressful, as if other people's lives aren't stressful. And so I wanted just to talk about how, oftentimes we're always talking about how we can manage stress. Like, what are ways that we can to avoid it or manage it or keep it low, all these things. But instead, how can we harness stress? How can we make it something that works in our favor, that benefits us in performance, that benefits us at work, maybe in our relationships? And so what we're going to do is we're just going to talk on some of the upsides of stress and how viewing stress differently can make a big impact on your life. So in a 2014 study done by the Harvard School of Mental Health, they found the most common stressors are juggling schedules, running errands, commuting, and some household tasks. So your things like cleaning, cooking, and repairs. But when we look at those things, they're all common, they're all normal, and they're things that we have every single day. Okay, so we go through our life juggling schedules, running errands, commuting, and household tasks. Those things aren't going away, but yet we treat them as if they're an imposition on our life. It's like, oh, I've got to go run errands. Oh, I got to commute 30 minutes to work. But yet that 30 minutes to work is not going away unless you move closer, or your work moves closer to you, or you change jobs that might be closer. But yet we still treat it as if it's an imposition on our life, and it creates this unwanted stress. Okay, so looking at that, if we're not going to experience them, or if we're not going to be able to change that, maybe we can change the experience of how we look at it. Okay, so if we can take that normal everyday stressor, such as commuting, and change our relationship with the experience and see the purpose behind why we have to commute. We commute because we have a job, and the job helps provide for our family. There's a purpose to the reason we're commuting. And so when we look at the purpose, we've now been able to take a purpose and add it to a stress. And when we find that purpose, the stress no longer is there because we can look at the bigger picture, right? So it becomes something that goes from draining us to something that sustains us, because we want to add purpose to the things that stress us out most. Because if you look at the things that you most commonly stress out about, it's things that you care about. Okay, so if you're looking at Kim, I appreciate you dropping in. I hope you're staying safe there in Alaska. I know those earthquakes hit you hard, so sending my prayers your way. Thank you for tuning in for a few minutes. Katie, what's up? If y'all wonder why Katie called me Corby is my nickname. We can talk about that later. All right, so back to here we are in stress, Kate. So when we transform the experience that we have with our stress, it becomes something that no longer drains us and becomes something that sustains us. Again, we're just adding purpose to the things that stress us out the most. Okay, so when you look, like we talked about here just a second ago, when we talk about commuting, you got to commute to work. Okay, the idea of commuting is not fun. Nobody likes to commute, but what is the purpose and the reason behind commuting? Okay, so we take that, we learn from that, and we say, okay, well, now I've got purpose. I've got to have this job. This job, either maybe this job is really meaningful in your life and you love the job. And the purpose is you just go to your job to serve, and that's the purpose. Or maybe that job is what helps you and your family live the life you want to live. But regardless, we're just adding meaning to that stressor to see if we can change the experience of it rather than it be something that continues to drain us. Okay, and like I said, the reason we stress out about things, it's because we care about those things. If we look at maybe like relationship stress. Okay, so you get stressed out in your relationship and anxiety and everything. It's probably because you really care about the person that you're with. Okay, so that makes a huge difference. Is that stress that we feel, and if we can look at how we care about that stress, it becomes a much different experience with that stress. Okay, and so a small shift in our mindset can trigger a cascade of changes so profound that they test the limits of what's possible. Okay, so if we're taking something as stress, something as common as stress, and we look at it and we can change the way we're viewing it, what kind of positive effects can that have on our life? And this all just comes back to just adding meaning to our stress. So, we think about, let's say, we'll bring it back here to WAG. All right, so you're starting out WAG, you're counting macros. Counting macros is very stressful in the beginning. You've got to weigh everything. You've got social events. You've got the holidays right now. There's so many things that are creating stress around simply just trying to make improvements. And so what we do is when we start to make a change that's creating stress, we start to think that maybe there's something wrong with our goal. Like, why is this goal causing so much stress in our life, as if there's a life out there where stress does not exist? So stress is going to be there regardless. And we're always going to have stress. And if we run from stress every time we try something new and it stresses us out, we're now just going to be living in fear, avoiding these things, as if someday that stress might go away. Or maybe that thing we do, maybe we'll find this new job that comes with no stress. Or maybe we're going to get into this relationship that has no stress. This life that we've created in our imagination of no stress doesn't really exist. There isn't a life of no stress. There's people, though, who manage their stress a lot better and who have seen the positive aspects of their stress in their life and add meaning to them to where it looks as if their life is not very stressful. And so the big thing here, it's been shown through many studies and psychology studies and stuff, that welcoming stress can actually boost confidence and improve performance. So if we talk about, my last Facebook post here, I put the question, let me find it, I just want to make sure. All right. Put the question here. So the question is trying to relax the best strategy for performing under pressure? Okay, so we look at somebody like, let's go basketball, for example. So you're in the free throw, you got to make your game-winning shot, and you got the opportunity to tell this person before they take the shot a word of advice. And I think in a study it's shown that 91% of people would tell that person to relax. As if standing on the free throw line with a game-winning shot on the line in front of thousands of fans, or maybe just your family, is a time that we probably should just relax and make the shot. I don't think that really happens. You can't really relax in a moment like that. So instead, if we could take that same moment and go from just try to relax to telling ourselves, I'm excited, and you take that stress and you take those butterflies and use that energy to allow you to fall back on your training and make the shot. And so, there's this thing that's like, you've heard I'm sure you've heard when somebody says, oh, that person's just got ice in their veins, as if they just have this predisposed talent that they were born with, that they can just make every game-winning shot without practicing, as if they rise to the occasion every single time. But what we don't often see is that these people are constantly putting in work, and without, like, they're always putting in work, they're making shots, they're practicing, they're doing all these things. So when it does come time to make these shots, we don't have to rise to the occasion. And instead we can just fall back on our training through the excitement of, I've got this, I know I've got this. And we believe in ourselves to be able to make those shots. So I think the question when I ask is the best advice for performing under pressure to relax, or is it to harness the stress, harness the anxiety, and tell yourself you're excited? So about 11 minutes ago, okay, we'll call it 15 minutes ago, I was getting ready to do this Facebook Live. And, like, the butterflies start to get in your stomach and you start to, like, heart's beating a little bit faster because you're a little nervous. I'm talking in front of people. And so you start to feel these things, but that's the same feeling I had when I was playing college soccer and there was a big game on the line. It was like my heart would start to beat, my palms would start to sweat. All of a sudden there's like more saliva in my mouth. And yet these are two completely different situations that both have created stress. And yet, instead of trying to relax, you just say, I've got this. I've practiced this. I've prepared for this. I think back to times where I've overcame similar challenges. So I think back to my college days and college soccer days, and I'm like, okay, I've done this before. I've practiced under pressure. And then I start to imagine support from loved ones. So, like, I think about in those moments of family who've supported me and people who have been there when I've overcome these challenges. And I've just acknowledged that the stress is there, and I've harnessed that the stress is there, and I've taken it from just relax, you've got this, to I'm excited, you've got this. And that little shift can be something that allows stress to be something that sustains us rather than something that drains us. And so, I know this is a real quick, I wanted to keep this short and simple and to the point, and try to challenge you on the way we're looking at stress, and how we can use it to our advantage. So I'm going to cover a few things. We had a few questions that came in on Facebook here prior to starting. And so I want to cover how maybe these, whether I covered them already and we can touch on them again. But then also, if you have questions, something you think about right now, go ahead and post it in the chat and I can answer those. So Jen had asked, what about how to harness stress to work for you rather than against you? And so, like I was just touching on, is like allowing that stress to have a place in your thoughts. Okay. So if we try to avoid it, as if maybe you're somebody who stresses out over plane flights. So if you're like, I'm just never going to fly. And then over time, when you start to avoid that of flying, that fear of flying, that fear becomes even like more of a fear. And now you start to dream about that fear and you're like, but there's this business conference I really want to go to, but that's going to require me to fly there. And so we start to get this thing where it's like fear overcomes our ability just to live our life. And so just being able to accept the stress and say, okay, I have a fear of flying, but I also have this desire to go to this business conference. How do I take that? And when I get into the plane, I don't tell myself to relax. I tell myself I'm excited for this business conference. I've planned for this. I'm excited to go see friends there. And we start to add purpose to why we're flying. And then that flight no longer feels as stressful because it's no longer a fear. And over time, you can overcome those fears. It doesn't mean that you're going to love flying. We're not here to make you love to fly. But what we want to do is to be able to harness that stress and learn from it and work through it so it no longer becomes something that works against us. And then Kate had asked a question here. I think this is a fantastic question here. So what is the difference when we need to push through our stress and when we need to take a breather to reset? And I think this is one of those things where we want to figure out what the stress that we're feeling, what it relates to. So how do we care about that stress? Because if it's something, the way we get stress is because something we care about. So if the stress, we can figure out what is it that we care about, why is it causing the stress, and what are things that we can do to manage it. And maybe, the stress of losing a loved one, you're not just going to overcome that by excitement. That doesn't work. So instead, maybe that's a time to take a breather and relax and use that as an opportunity to deepen the relationships with everybody else around you, because we don't like that feeling of losing someone. And so maybe that's a time we can learn and say, maybe we weren't building deep and meaningful relationships with the people around us, and I feel as if I missed out, and I'm stressed that I missed out on something. And so that's a time we would take a breather to reset. And then there's times when you're in competition and you get this stress, like, I don't know if I can do this. I've never been able to do this. And so we start to create the stress and anxiety over something that we know we probably can do, but we've never done it. So instead we can say, that's a time we can say, I'm excited. I'm excited to tackle this new thing, regardless of how it turns out. We look at athletes in the CrossFit Games and they don't know workouts until they get there. And sometimes even until they're on the competition floor. The amount of stress and anxiety they're under in that moment, not knowing, is one of those things that we just accept to be like, it's okay that I don't know because nobody else knows. But I know that what I've practiced and that I've got support and that there's times that I've overcome very similar situations that I can push through this and that I can believe in myself. So those are two different situations that how to handle stress, because like I said at the beginning, stress can be there's everything. Like I said, from losing a loved one to hitting so many red lights on your way to work. Both are stressful. Both have different responses. And then, all right, so we've got identifying harmful and consuming stress versus the positive aspects of it. And this, I think, just again goes back to figuring out what is causing the stress. Is taking your little brother to soccer practice something that's consuming your life and creating so much stress that, it's something that we can't handle? And so taking that moment and saying, okay, what is the purpose of me taking my little brother to soccer practice? Well, I take him to soccer practice because he loves to play soccer. I take him to soccer practice because I feel that it's helping him grow. And then you take him to soccer practice because you can help out maybe somebody in your family who wasn't able to take them. And so we look at what is that stress that is consuming us or feeling harmful at the time, and figuring out what is the purpose, what is the meaning behind it, and taking that purpose and being able to apply it to overcoming that stress or working through that stress. So a lot of it really just comes back to a stressful life is a meaningful life. And if we can find meaning in our stress, we're able to change the way we experience stress. And that's the biggest thing, is you're not going to eliminate stress altogether. You're not going to be the world's greatest person managing stress. We're just trying to learn how to experience it a little bit better. And if we can experience stress a little bit better every day, our life becomes a little less stressful. So that's basically all I've got on stress. If anybody's got any questions, I touched on some of those questions here in the Facebook. Feel free to ask them. If you tune in later, you are welcome to ask them on the Facebook page, and I will get back to you. But yeah, that's all I've got on stress. I hope you live a more meaningful and stressful life. All right, have a good weekend, guys.